In this presentation, I want to unpack the whole conversation around wearable technology. Wearable technology meaning Fitbits, Apple Watches, and we'll even discuss some other things as well. Does it truly motivate us to higher levels of wellness? Why or why not? And then other pros and cons that I want to discuss as well. I'm Susan Shannon. I'm a psychology major at Bethel CAPS. That's the College of Adult and Professional Studies at Bethel University in the Twin Cities. For this course of physical wellness and well-being, we wanted to unpack a research topic, and this was the topic that I chose because it's such a current topic of today. When you talk about health and wellness and so many of the wellness habits that we want to cultivate, a lot of us will strap on our Apple Watch, or we will look at some of the new devices out there and think, this is the next thing that I need to make sure that I am achieving my healthiest self. So I want to unpack this concept a little bit more. How did wearable technology get started? Why has it become such a big thing? Is it effective as we think it is? And more. This topic matters to me because, of course, I am a millennial who loves to use technology, and wearable technology is a great thing that many of us have access to. My own personal story with wearable technology is I've owned a Fitbit, a couple different models. I recently did have an Apple Watch that was given to me, but once it stopped charging effectively and not working effectively, I actually didn't replace it. And so that topic and that question for me feels like a personal one as of recently, because I've found that I don't need it to be healthy, but also it has some nice features that I sometimes miss. So this question has been top of mind for me, and it was a topic that I was excited to dive deeper into. Some questions that I had when first looking at some of the resources and pulling together this presentation were the cost of wearable technology can be high. So is it worth the cost? Does wearable technology truly increase motivation to be healthier and more active? Is it more placebo, etc.? Are there any side effects or notable cons to wearing technology like this? And then how to choose the right wearable technology for each person? And is it right for each person? Is it necessary to achieve our goals, etc.? A few of the types of common wearable tech right now, we of course, many of us probably have an Apple Watch, especially if we have an iPhone. There's many other brands that are not Apple related. Of course, Fitbit is still a front runner. There's Garmin. There's many other brands that have watches that are smartwatches. Many of them with incredibly sensitive biosensors that are not only monitoring our steps, but also our heart rates and many other things in the body. And of course, our breathing and our sleep, even when we sleep. And a few other notables are the recent craze in VR headsets and many of the fitness programs that are actually being built for the use with VR headsets and kind of that virtual reality workout. Of course, we are seeing into the future too, things like the fitness ring, which make wearing the technology even easier than even strapping on a watch, just this ring that you can sleep with, shower with, etc. And then, of course, on the horizon as well, we already have many for pro athletes, but there is wearable technology in clothing as well. And this is noteworthy, especially since this is one that I think we might be seeing more of in the next decade or so, becoming more accessible to the everyday average working American or anywhere in the world. We also know that we have smart glasses and other medical and biosensor devices as well that I don't list here. I was very curious about the history. And of course, this is only a few of the snapshot highlights from the history and the development of the technology, but a few noteworthy things that I pulled out of the timeline were in 1268, we look back very far, and people were already having ideas about what wearable technology could look like in the form of eyeglasses. Of course, they were thought of, let's improve vision, but also what else could we do with this? Could we see the world through a different way, etc. In 1762, the pocket watch was invented, which may seem unrelated, but is deeply related, because all of a sudden we had a portable device that could tell the time wherever we went. So this whole concept catapulted this desire to learn more about how can we bring these devices more with us wherever we go. How else can these devices be helpful? In 1993, the wearable GPS from Pathfinder came out. Some of us remember that. In 1965, the very first step tracker was invented and manufactured in Japan, the Manpo Key. And this was meant to track your first 1,000 steps every day, and kind of make sure you got those 1,000 steps in per day. So that's a very notable invention and development in this roadmap. In the early 2000s, of course, and I remember being a kid growing up in the 90s and then entering into the 2000s, we started to see things like navigation devices for cars, and then you could take them with you on long bike rides, and people were talking about how they were taking them with them on hikes and long excursions. So we started to see things come out like Fitbit, and Garmin came out with some fitness things. TomTom, do we all remember the TomTom when that came out and started the big craze? The first Apple Watch came out just in 2015, which I know for many of us doesn't feel like that long ago. So the roadmap has been long, and of course there are many things in here as well. People were inspired by Hollywood's depiction of sci-fi and how can we create more wearable technology devices as depicted in films, etc. There's so many interesting things on this journey to where we are now, but obviously we've seen massive progress, especially in the last 20, 30 years. The purpose of wearable technology is, of course, we see it for monitoring heart rate and fitness. We see it for tracking steps and mileage. We see the purpose for navigation and tracking. So many of us are using maps every day. Of course, it monitors sleep and other wellness habits. We get our notifications on it. We can communicate with others on many of these devices, not all of them, but many of them. We're looking at the purpose of these wearable technology pieces also for disease prevention and management, because we've seen, and I've seen over studying this material over the last week or so, that this development in wearable technology is actually giving us great long-term feedback of our current state of health and health over a period of time that is giving us great insight into how we can prevent disease for each person individually based on their health data as collected over time. And of course, with wearable technology comes this fun gamification of health and wellness that can help, especially in the short term, as we'll talk a little bit more about, really achieve those goals. Use in our daily lives. Nearly half of Americans own some kind of wearable technology, 40%, according to Statista online. And they find it useful in their daily lives. Most of us can probably say that is true. What I found was interesting, and what I also find to feel very accurate, is that according to GCF Global, which is cited at the end of this presentation, we see that 30% of those 40% usership often will stop using just due to loss of interest, finding it ineffective, etc. So I found that those to be some interesting statistics as I continued to learn more. More pros and cons, of course. Goal setting can increase short-term motivation. If we've had a wearable technology device, we know that especially right away, those first few weeks or months that you have it, you are more motivated than usual. Does that wane over time? For many users, it does, but especially short-term motivation can be definitely improve. Accountability and reminders. Of course, we have the notifications. It tells us when to stand up, when to breathe, when to get our heart rate back up. And these reminders can be very effective. And of course, as I already alluded to, it's collecting long-term data that can improve our wellness over time. Some of the cons that are equally as notable, I think, are that distraction and safety concerns. Of course, if we're driving, we can put our phone easily in our bag and not be distracted. But with our watch, it's probably on our wrist. So there's distractions as far as that goes. There's the cybersecurity concern, which is still being researched. How can we make wearable technology devices, which have so much access to us and our information, how can we make them as secure as possible, which is still something being improved. Small amounts of RF radiation have also been proven to be emitted from many of these devices. And there isn't conclusive conclusions yet as to the long-term effects of whether or not those RF radiation rays are actually going to be a concern for the long-term health of us users or not. That's something still being studied. So something I think to not be too overly concerned about, but at the same time to really keep in mind and to be aware of. One study that the UCLA did earlier this year that was published in Frontiers of Psychology was on the Oura Ring, which is one of the newer pieces of wearable technology that's been coming out and getting a lot of interest, from myself included. They took two groups of participants. Half received additional texting support and half just was able to, from my understanding, just able to use the ring. And there was little to no improvement, or far less improvement, in the group that was just testing out the ring. They may have enjoyed it, it was good, but as far as overall statistical improvement in these areas of health, there was little to none, but there was extensive improvement in the supported group that got additional text support from Oura while the study was taking place, from the study, those putting out the study over that 9-month period of time, which I thought was very interesting, which led me to kind of wrap together a conclusion for this presentation as well. If we don't have a fitness tracker, or even if we do, there's these key ingredients that really seem to be the deal breaker when it comes to how effective these things are. Ultimately, accountability seems to be the #1 priority, and as to whether or not we are actually going to achieve a health or fitness goal that we have set out to achieve. So if you don't have a fitness tracker, good news. Pull together some friends, put together a plan, keep a plan, and take notes. As painstaking as this can be, taking notes and really keeping track of your own progress as you go, having a goal, filling up a chart, writing down your mileage, writing each morning how you slept the night before can be really effective. But of course, we know that having that additional technology can be incredibly helpful, but paired with these other things. So in conclusion, wearable technology can be effective in helping support a healthy lifestyle, especially when it comes to daily movement and disease prevention. These were the notable things that stood out to me from my research. Was they can be very helpful in these smaller ways and day-to-day lifestyle things, but the top improvements that they see over these studies are really in just being a tool for daily support, getting our movement in, and really that disease prevention piece. I think there's a lot of really great things to be said for the studies being done in that we can continue to look ahead into the future for. It can be one more tool and/or source of accountability in our collection of positive resources that all cumulatively help to support our health and wellness goals. Thank you so much for listening.